Okay, so 120 points lower on the Nifty. Right there, the market, no change. Europe, of course, is trading, and there is a pressure in European markets as well, as we pointed out earlier. IT is in focus. Credit Suisse has put out a note on the IT sector. What are the main points, and what is their stance on the space? Now, Rima is joining in with those highlights. Rima.
Hi. Well, interesting insights coming in from brokerage house Credit Suisse on the impact of the rupee appreciation on the sector. They say the INR is appreciated by 7% in the last 6 months. 3% of that has actually come through in the month of March itself, and a continued strength in the rupee will, one, impact the margins negatively, and secondly, weigh down on the valuations. Now, an INR appreciation impacts the companies in 3 ways. One, there will be a drop in margins. Secondly, there will be translation losses on all their dollar-denominated assets, which includes unbilled revenues as well as receivables. But thirdly, it will be offset on account of the gains that they make on their hedge book. But net-net, the impact is negative. So a 1% rupee appreciation impacts EBIT margins by 20 to 30 basis points. And historically, they say the currency moves have shown up in margins on a pretty immediate basis. But the more telling story, or the more worrying thing, according to Credit Suisse, is the impact on growth. Now, they said in 2018, the companies enjoyed a currency depreciation. That benefit was used by the companies to shore up their investments to capitalize on the increased demand, which pushed up the growth rates of companies. Now that we're seeing the rupee appreciate, if the companies choose to protect their margins, then they will have to cut back on their investments, which could impact growth in the coming few quarters, and that, according to them, is the big worry. Also, they go on to say that in 2018, companies like TCS and Infosys had a stellar run, but they believe 2/3 of that EPS-related upgrades were on account of the currency depreciation, and now going ahead, at least those EPS-led upgrades will stop for the IT companies. But I guess the trend to watch will be that if the companies choose to protect their margin, they may have to cut back on their investments, and therefore they may not be able to capitalize on their demand, or it could impact their growth negatively going ahead. Back to you.
Rima, thanks very much for that. There's some news flow that's flashing for you on your screen. We understand that Mindtree may constitute an independent directors committee in their board meet. That's tomorrow. Nisha Podar, my colleague who's bringing us this exclusive news, now joins in with with all the details. Nisha.
Thanks for that, Sumaira. Of course, this is setting the highest standards when it comes to the corporate governance norms of the company. And Mindtree, as we gather from sources with direct knowledge, at least 2 independent sources have confirmed that Mindtree board is likely to constitute the independent directors committee, and that particular matter will be taken up in the board meeting on 26th of March, which is closely awaited given the L&T takeover bid for Mindtree. So what I do gather from sources with direct knowledge is that the independent directors committee will be deliberating on the long-term value impact of the shareholders in the eventuality of L&T really taking over the company, and what should the company do. We know that the promoters are not on board with this particular acquisition, and therefore the operations of the company should not be disrupted. This is going to be one of the pivotal points that the independent directors would really be deliberating on. Of course, the board meeting has been really called for discussing the buyback option, which had been announced by the company. So that will also be deliberated on. We do gather from sources with direct knowledge that the 4-member independent directors committee is likely to be formed, which will be headed by Apurva Purohit. So don't be surprised if the independent directors committee separately also gives out the comments after the board meeting on the deliberations and the various aspects that they're looking at. But their primary objective at this point is to look at the interests of the shareholders, and especially the non-promoter shareholders in this particular case, because the board is constituted by a lot of promoters and the management which are against this particular takeover. So it will be a very crucial role that the independent directors will take upon themselves in this particular meeting. But it may not be that all the details would be coming out in tomorrow's board meet itself. It could be a continuous process of talking, negotiating and deliberating on various aspects.
All right, Nisha, thanks very much for that. So more at Mindtree, and we'll keep you up to date with what comes out of that meeting. Don't expect everything to be crystal clear, but this is certainly moving forward. It's a wrap here on this edition of Mid-Cap Radar. From Sumaira, me, everyone on the team, thank you very much for staying with us. We'll leave you with some opinion we got from Hiren Ved, Director and CIO at Alchemy Capital, earlier this morning.
Last couple of weeks, India is just catching up. The underperformance that we had in Jan and Feb, while the rest of the EM pack was rallying, we were grossly underperforming. And I think we are seeing a catch-up rally since then. I think the overall context, longer term for emerging markets seems to be quite positive. I think we are finally seeing the delayed impact of the NBFC crisis on some of these, sectors like auto. And there are multiple things, insurance costs, and the delayed impact of NBFC crisis. So I think, but I believe that, a lot of that should get reversed in the second half of the calendar year. Obviously, a monsoon will also play an important role, but I think that this slowdown should be fairly temporary.